All right. Well, welcome back to the show. And joining us once again is our very good friend, Stewart Bell. Stewart is a producer at The Inside Line. He's also an FIA accredited Formula One journalist. He's written for news.com.au, 7 Sport, Motorsport Magazine, GP Racing, and a lot more. You can follow Stewart at Stewart Bell F1, and that's Stewart Stewart, Bell Bell F1. And you can also check out their website at theinsideline.com. Stewart, it's a real pleasure. Welcome back. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm very well. Looking forward to the Australian Grand Prix after two fantastic races. I mean, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, blockbusters. So Australia is going to be another level and in this exciting new era of Formula One.
In a sense, we've almost come full circle. I mean, it's been almost exactly 2 years. I mean, no pun intended. I mean, the Australian Grand Prix in 2020 was almost ground zero when everything started shutting down. But here we are 2 years later. We're in a much better place. Things are tracking in the right direction. There's a lot of positivity going on. And I couldn't help but wondering what's the vibe like in the city right now? There must be some genuine excitement to have a big event like the Grand Prix. I know that the tennis was held not so long ago, but it's great to see.
It is. I mean, Melbourne is looking fantastic. The circuit's looking great. Everyone's enjoying being out and about, going to restaurants. There's lots of a huge buzz in the city at a night when everyone's looking to go out and have a drink or have a great meal. There's a huge thirst for Formula One. Of course, as you said, there's been the Australian Open, and before that we had the Boxing Day test for the cricket. And we've had other events, but the Australian Grand Prix is a huge international event, and it's really our return to hosting world sport. And there is a huge following. The Australian Grand Prix pre-COVID was feeling not tired, but a little bit stable, but a little bit tired, I guess you could say. But on the back of a thrilling season last year and what we've seen this year with the new era, along with shows like Drive to Survive from Netflix, F1 is booming here. The circuit is, the event is sold out for Saturday and Sunday. Friday ticket sales are going, strong. So it's going to be a capacity crowd for sure. And everyone is looking forward to getting back out there to events that we haven't been able to go to for, since the start of the pandemic.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. So are they expecting a capacity crowd? Because I heard a couple of weeks ago that perhaps I know they're trying to attract a record crowd, and maybe it wouldn't happen, but not for the reasons we've become accustomed to over the past couple of years. It was perhaps maybe more of logistics. So what kind of numbers can we expect to see in the stands over the next several days? Any idea?
They've set 130,000 capped numbers per day, but it's on hospitality industry staffing shortages. So, during COVID, hospitality suffered very badly, and although lots of restaurants switched to takeaway and delivery options, a lot of people found other work. So they're recruiting for all of the hospitality and catering jobs still up all the way up to the event itself. And maybe they will lift those crowd numbers slightly with more people recruited, but it'll definitely be a capacity crowd. We're not expecting it to be the record 154,000 which they had in 1996 for the first one. But I can tell you this: it will be a massive crowd at Albert Park like we probably haven't seen in the modern era. So I expect that it will be chock-a-block, as we say in Australia, very, very, very busy, and it'll be great to see. Everyone will be having a great time.
Yeah, well, we're all excited to watch it, and it's going to be interesting as well because it's not quite the traditional time slot that we've been used to seeing the Australian Grand Prix fit into the schedule over the last, as far as I could remember. I know at other times in the past it wasn't always the start of the Formula One season, but perhaps even though with the revamped schedule, this is ideal because we've had two cracking Grand Prix to start the season, whereas in years gone by, with being the first race of the year, we always didn't know what to expect with the new cars and everything like that. But we've been treated to two very exciting races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. And here we come back to Albert Park. The track's been revamped for this year. So, but first of all, before we get into the race this weekend itself, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what we saw in Saudi Arabia, what we saw in Bahrain. Two exciting Grand Prix, as I said, and the brand new cars. Love to hear your thoughts on it.
Sure. Well, I think the brand new cars really have delivered. I mean, They wanted to have closer racing. They've certainly got that. They wanted sexier cars that kids are going to want to put on their bedroom walls again. I think they've delivered that. All the new cars look fantastic with a real variety of design philosophies right throughout the field. The racing's been close. Obviously, to see Ferrari and Red Bull up front fighting tooth and nail was amazing. And Charles Leclerc to win in Bahrain, it really fires the excitement for a big season to see Ferrari back at the top, not languishing, in chasing mode as they have been, or even well off the pace as they have been. But to see how in Saudi Arabia that Red Bull could come back and challenge the Ferraris, watching Max be patient. I mean, that's something we haven't seen for a while. He's been the top gun, pushing, fighting tooth and nail for every place that he's had. But I think it's exciting, and to see the shuffling in the midfield, to see Haas and Alfa Romeo where they are, to see Alpine gunning both of those, it's exciting, and it really bodes well for a thrilling season. And really, on the back of last season, where almost every race was a thriller, there was some concerns that this year wouldn't be able to match that. Obviously, when you have a huge regulation change, the field spreads out again. But I think the first iteration of the new era has been fantastic. The racing through the midfield has been hard. And I think once Mercedes is able to solve its porpoising issues, we'll see them hopefully rejoin that fight and have three teams in the mix at the front, which is just unprecedented for F1. And to see a real competition is what we all want to see. That's what we want to see, is battling all the way through the field, but especially up front.
As much as we've been treated to some fantastic racing through the first couple of races, I must admit I was quite disappointed to see the issues that Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez had at Bahrain, especially in those last couple of laps. And I thought it was setting up nicely, just the way that things had worked themselves out. And you had Sergio Perez in front of Lewis Hamilton with the last couple of laps to go. He had a mechanical issue. Max had the mechanical issue. And I couldn't help but feeling, I'm disappointed now, but we still have 22 races to go. And like you say, if Mercedes can figure out what their issues are and get the car set up and performing to what they expect and what they believe it's capable of, we could really be in for a real treat. But I also like to get your take on the first two races of the year. Who's hot? Who's not been hot? Who's over-delivered, or who's been a pleasant surprise, and who's left a little bit to be desired through teams, drivers? I'm just curious. There's plenty of good talking points only 2 weeks into the year.
Absolutely. I think I've been surprised by Sergio Perez over-delivering at Red Bull. He's more comfortable in the RB18 than Max is at the moment. So the fact to see him take that pole position lap in Jeddah was incredible. It was an astonishing lap. He said himself, it was my greatest ever lap, and that he couldn't, replicate that with 1,000 more laps. So that shows what sort of, level he's delivering at. And he's pushed all the way from when he first joined Red Bull. He knew this was going to be his chance, and he has given it everything to be competitive there. On the other hand, Carlos Sainz, I've been a little bit disappointed with in getting to grips with that Ferrari. Charles Leclerc has been far more superior, and that's been a really disappointing thing, because I think we expected Leclerc and Sainz to be far more equal, and for there to be fireworks there, right at the front, a la Rosberg and Hamilton, because I think that's what is coming once Sainz gets on terms with Leclerc. If they can get on terms, if Sainz can get on terms, then those two are going to be bucking horns for sure. But yeah, George Russell, his performance at Saudi, five places higher, the theoretical best that Mercedes is capable of. What an impressive start. The team is really impressed with him. He knows the team really well. Obviously, he raced for them in 2020 at the Sakir Grand Prix, almost won it, if not for a puncture and a botched pit stop. Mm-hmm. Really impressive guy there. And further down the field, Kevin Magnussen to come back in after a year out. So impressive. He is just I've listened to a few interviews with him, and just to hear, he was very jaded. I spoke with him just before he retired for the first time in F1 at the end of 2020. And he was very jaded and a little bit so disappointed that he was closing that chapter. But he's come back with a renewed strength, having won a race in the IMSA series and more perspective. And he said that the car is a joy to drive, and that's exciting to see. Especially given he's also going to be pushing Mick Schumacher to be a lot stronger, and that's what he needs, is someone, a reference for him. So I've been impressed with Kevin Magnussen as well. Guan Yu Zhou, or Zhou Guan Yu as he's now known, very impressive start for a rookie, the only rookie in the field, and up against Bottas, who is absolutely pushing himself very, very hard to be, rejuvenate his career after a Mercedes. So they're some of the standouts for me, but obviously there'll be more to come as we go through the season.
Absolutely. There's some great stories. And I couldn't help but thinking when you were just talking about Sergio Perez that perhaps if he can continue what he's delivered through the first couple of races of the season, that maybe, just maybe, Red Bull will have that 1-2 punch like they had several years ago with Max and Danny Ricciardo. Well, obviously, we'll talk about Danny in a few more minutes here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on him. But let's look ahead because there's some changes to the track that were promised last year. What is new in Albert Park, and how do you think it's going to affect the racing this weekend? What can we expect?
Well, I think there's been changes to most corners at Albert Park. Most of the corners have been either widened or straightened to provide more contestable corners, to provide better racing, to try and penalise drivers if they get the corners wrong. But the big changes is at turn 6, which is the end of sector 1. That's been cut. The apex has been cut basically straight there, and it's going to be 70 kilometres an hour faster than it was previously. And then we've obviously lost that back chicane at what was turn 9 and 10, and that's now an extended back straight with a higher top speed of 330 kilometres per hour. The best thing is they haven't lost the character of the track, what it was. It was a beautiful circuit. Unfortunately, it wasn't great for passing. And in the last 3 events, we only had 18 passes after the first lap, and only 1 pass for the lead, which I think it was 2002 Montoya on Schumacher. So that's not good in terms of stats, and not what we want to see in F1's new era. So I think the stars are aligned with all the changes to the track and the changes to the car. It bodes well for strong racing, but as I said, they've designed it with more contestable corners so that drivers are racing each other, battling each other into more corners, and also that if they get it wrong, then they're penalised. So it's exciting. We don't know what's going to happen. There's 4 DRS zones. All the stars, as I said, are aligned. We just have to wait and see how it's gone. But they've consulted with all the drivers. Daniel Ricciardo today said he's had a hand in those changes, and he's excited for what's to come. So all the ingredients are there for the right result, and the event will be bigger than ever. But the racing, I think, for its long-term future and for everyone who loves Albert Park, we want to see better racing, and certainly they've done everything they can to do that.
Well, that's great. And, I couldn't help but think, too, I mean, there was some talk in recent years that perhaps there might be some renewed push or some interest to maybe bring the race back to Adelaide. But, you obviously would know a little bit more about that. Is the race set to stay in Melbourne for the long term, or is it just not realistic to expect it to move back to Adelaide, which was its home for a very, very long time as well?
Of course, and I've been to Adelaide for the Clipsal 500, for the Adelaide 500, or whatever you want to call it, with the Supercar Series. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful track. You can feel the ghost of the past there with Formula One. There's real heritage there, but Adelaide is the capital of South Australia, but it is effectively a country town for a capital city. It's small, and the other thing that the track that they used to use took in 2 of the main thoroughfares into the city, and after F1 left, they cut the circuit. So the one that they've used for the touring cars has been only used one of those thoroughfares, and I think Adelaideans, as they're known, would not be very happy to have all of their major thoroughfares of the city cut for the Grand Prix. But I think F1 has outgrown Adelaide. In all honesty, Melbourne is the place to be. Everything's set up here. It's a big city for sport. It's a big city for hospitality. It's a big city for music. It's got, yes, Sydney has the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, but we have the culture and the sport mad fans and all the hotels and everything that F1 needs to stay here. So there was a push last year for a potential move to Sydney. It would have to be an amazing circuit for it to snare it away. It would have to go over the Harbour Bridge. But I really do think that the circuit here has cemented the changes. They've invested $20 million in track changes. They've resurfaced the track completely. So I think for all intents and purposes, Melbourne is the home. Melbourne is where it will stay. And, we can't say that with 100% certainty, but all those answers point to it staying in Melbourne long term.
So Melbourne's a big city that's used to putting on big events, and I guess we could maybe segue, maybe somewhat awkwardly, into big personalities. And one big personality would be Danny Ricciardo, obviously a big, vibrant fellow and very personable. And I'd love to hear what, Danny obviously had a bit of a mixed 2021. Pardon, I was going to say 2020. Lost all track of time here during the last 2 years. But anyways, his first year with McLaren was a little bit hit and miss. I mean, that wonderful win in Monza, it was an epic weekend and an epic result for the team. But by and large, he struggled in the car and struggled to match his teammate. This year, we see him a little bit closer to Lando. But as we've seen through the first couple of races through the season, McLaren appears to be one of the teams that I wouldn't say is on the outside looking in, but they obviously haven't quite figured it out compared to a lot of the other teams. So what do you think is happening with both Daniel and McLaren at the moment?
I mean, for Daniel, I saw him a few hours ago looking in great shape, very, very lean. He's hungry for better results. He said that himself, I would love a win or a podium here, but it's just not possible right now. Last year, he took a lot of time to get used to that MCL 35M. It didn't suit his braking style. And, he was very, very happy at McLaren. He's very happy with that team and how they treat him, how, he feels at home there. But that car didn't suit him well. He was destroyed on stats by Lando Norris. I think it was 14-7 in qualifying, 15-8 in the races when they could be compared. Yes, he got that win in Monza ahead of Lando, but Lando earned 45 more points, which is what it's all about. So he has a big mountain to climb this year especially with Lando signing a new contract with the team. That's, that shows that Lando is an important part of McLaren's future. And to some extent, Dan needs to do that as well. So this car, it lacks downforce, brake issues, and he wasn't happy with the Bahrain performance. Saudi suited the car a little bit better, and he thinks the same will be applied here in Melbourne. But he's fighting for points. He's fighting for a point. I mean, he was 14th in Bahrain, and obviously DNF'd the last race in Saudi. So he needs to get some points on the board and fast, and he needs to be ahead of Lando each and every time. But that is going to be a huge challenge for him. So he's got it all to do. I mean, he must question why he left Red Bull. I can understand that Honda was coming, sort of a question mark over their performance given what they'd done previously with McLaren. The team was increasingly being built around Max, but to then move from Renault, where he had sort of a failed campaign with Renault, and then to jump into McLaren, he must start delivering. Otherwise, I mean, they're not going to drop him, but it just affects his credibility. And so he needs to come back strong this year, and he knows that. So it's about, just restarting his season here in Melbourne.
Well, I certainly hope that he has a better start or a better Australian Grand Prix than was it 2018 or 2019 when he even failed to make it to the starting grid. Did he not retire on the warm-up lap? What year was that?
I think that was 2018, and then 2019 when he was at Renault, he hit that sort of grassy verge on the run down to turn one. So
that's correct. Yeah.
So that was another really disappointing because that's just such an anomaly. I mean, that piece of concrete now has been completely covered, so that can't happen again to anyone. But he's had a lot of tough tough times here, but I think the home crowd, everyone's behind him. Everyone wants to see Dan do well. Obviously, they can't wait to see Oscarpiastre coming, after him. He'll be on the grid next year, but Australians love to support their own, as does every country on the planet. So he'll have plenty of support here, and everyone wants him to do well. So a podium's likely it's not likely. It is out of the question unless something crazy happens. But we want to see him get some points on the board and to boost that confidence going to Imola.
Well, that's a great question. Now, you said barring something crazy happening this weekend. So the one thing that immediately comes to mind that can flip a Grand Prix upside down would be the weather. What is the weather forecast for the days ahead?
I mean, the weather, in terms of weather, there is rain predicted for Sunday. But it's beautiful today. Today is absolutely gorgeous in terms of just a beautiful summer, sort of autumnal day, I should say. Tomorrow is 24, top of 24, sunny, 23, sunny on Friday, Saturday 26, so it's perfect temperature. And then Sunday 26, but rain. So whether that falls during the race, who knows? But there's a chance for a mix-up there for sure. And if there is rain, then that allows Dan to come through the field, or any driver to come through the field and use their wet weather skills, as we've seen from Max Verstappen and others.
But before we end our conversation, Stewart, I'm just going to let you think on this one before I ask you, to make your prediction for the race itself. But you just mentioned Oscar Piastri. Do you believe that it's just a question of time before we see him in Formula One? I mean, his name was thrown about, quite a bit last year that he could be joining a Formula One team in a drive for this year.
Absolutely. He is 3 straight titles: Formula Euro Cup, Formula 3 and Formula 2. Formula 3 and Formula 2 in his rookie season. You don't do that unless you're absolutely talented. He was up against top talent in those fields. His time is coming, and that's not just me as an Australian saying that. It's that sort of caliber we've seen from Lewis, we've seen from Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Nico Hulkenberg, Romain Grosjean. Those drivers all absolutely delivered in the junior categories, and obviously delivering in F1 is a completely different story. Mm-hmm. But I do expect him to be on the 23 grid. Maybe not at Alpine. Maybe Alpine will farm him out. I mean, they've already said that he is open for any COVID call-ups, a la McLaren, which was offered to him. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think, it would be really ridiculous to not have him on the grid, given his credentials in the junior categories. He's like a juggernaut, ready for his chance. So whether it will be Alpine, whether Alonso will continue, you would think that he would. But if Renault starts supplying another engine to another team, potentially there might be an option there. So we'll see what happens. But given his credentials, he's a lock on the 23 grid.
Yeah, watch this space, as they say. Now, Stewart, based on the huge sample that we have of 2 races with the brand new cars, I'm going to ask you now to make a bold prediction. Who do you think may do well this weekend? Have you seen enough out of the new cars to make a prediction that Albert Park may suit this car more than that car? Is it a little bit too early to tell? I mean, Ferrari and Red Bull have obviously been the 2 standouts in the first couple of races, so we would expect that to continue, but would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, I think we're going to see a repeat of Saudi. I mean, it's not obviously the ultimate fastest outright, sort of flat-out blast like Monza or Saudi, but the changes to Albert Park make it one of the top 5 fastest in the world now. So, or on the calendar at least. So I would say that we will see Verstappen right at the front with Leclerc. Whether he can get past, I would say that Leclerc is the favourite, followed by Verstappen. But anything can happen, especially if there's wet weather. Haas are hoping for a podium. Who knows what will happen if that's the case. But I would say Charles Leclerc will be my favourite for the race win, followed by Verstappen. But if Carlos Sainz can bring it up there as well, he's in contention.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing the race this weekend in Melbourne. I mean, after Saudi and all the changes, Stuart, I just, maybe it's just me, but I didn't feel comfortable watching that race, especially after Mick Schumacher had that big moment on Saturday. despite the improvements, quote unquote, that they made, that track I find a little bit frightening. So I'm looking forward to getting back to a track that I think that both fans and drivers are maybe a little bit more at ease with. So anyways, well, Stewart, wonderful to talk to you once again. It's been a while since we last connected. Would you, before we part company again, would you please remind everybody where they can find you online?
Sure. Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me on the show. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's at Stewart Bell F1, and on Instagram as well, same username. So, and the Inside Line is on YouTube as well. So, if you'd like to see what we're doing there, just go to YouTube and search for the Inside Line.
Wonderful, Stewart. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a short moment after a quick message from our sponsors.